If you've recently converted your garage into a living or workspace and you need to sort out some sound and thermal insulation for the door and you're on a bit of a tight budget, then stick around for the next 10 minutes and I'll show you how to sort it out. Hello again and welcome back to my channel. Now, the way we live our lives has obviously changed considerably in the last 6 months, and many people across the country are looking at adapting their properties to meet their changing needs. It appears now that temporary working measures from home are now becoming a more permanent fixture for millions of folk. So realistically, you might need to find a more permanent solution than sitting at the dining table. This has led to a huge increase in demand for things like garden rooms, of which I'm building my own, link in the description, and garage conversions on a budget. This is exactly what happened when my sister-in-law and brother got in touch saying that they'd converted their garage to a living space, which will be office space during the day and a living lounge space for my niece in the evening. They've done a fantastic job in decorating it in kind of a New York loft style apartment simply by painting the brickwork and painting and polishing the concrete floor. The biggest problem with this project though was the metal garage door, as all the heat was radiating out and it offers no sound insulation whatsoever. Now, before I talk about how I went about heat and sound insulation in this door, I have two disclaimers that you must listen to before considering doing this yourself. Firstly, applying any object to a garage door will inevitably add weight. This means if you're tending to open and close the garage door, you must consult a professional garage door installer to see if it's possible that your spring tensions on your model can be adjusted to cope with the extra weight. Secondly, when I talk about sound insulation for this project, this will be more than sufficient for everyday living. For example, watching TV, office, or having some friends around. Please do not think that what I'm done here, you can go and reform your Led Zeppelin tribute band and expect no hassle from the neighbours. Okay, onto the project itself. As anyone does these days, if you're planning on doing something you haven't done before, you turn to YouTube, which is exactly what I did, as I knew this was a tight budget and I wanted to get the best value for money. I came across Thomaz and his Casual DIY channel, which has an excellent video about garage door modification, of which I'll leave a link in the description. The first thing I asked from my brother was him to take some pictures on the internal side of the door with some measurements so I could plan how best to go about this. The insulation I decided upon was this, which is called Thermawrap. In effect, it's bubble wrap, but using foil instead of plastic. To be honest, I was a little bit sceptical about its insulation properties, but I can assure you that once this project was completed, it provides excellent thermal insulation, and a roll of this stuff can be purchased for about £15, which would be more than enough for a single UK garage door. So once I decided on the heat insulation, I then had to decide how to go about offering some form of sound insulation. Looking at the garage door, I decided to make 6 separate panels out of 3mm hardboard, as you can see by the blue crosses. This can be purchased for around £8 per sheet, and you will need 2 sheets for a door this size. I was going to fix these panels to the garage door using timber battens, shown here with the black lines. This would mean that the panels would be fixed at 3 sides. Please do not attempt to screw or drill the markings where you can see the red running down the side, as this could interfere with the mechanisms. Right, so this is how I went about it. As I didn't want to do any painting at the property, I decided to undercoat and top coat the panels at home. It's not something ideally I'd like to do, as you run the risk of spoiling the finished effect in transit or in installation, but I felt like I had no other choice. To help compensate for this, I cut the panels over 100mm bigger than what I needed. I'm using Leyland Acrylic primer undercoat along with 2 coats of Johnstone Satinwood for the finish. Obviously, you don't have to run out and buy a spray gun, as you could just easily do this with a brush or a roller. By the way, if you are interested in any of the products that I use in this video, I will leave links in the description. I was really happy with the finish, so the next stage was to go on to the installation itself. Before installing any of the insulation, it's vitally important you take a picture of any of the dimensions data on the inside of the door, as you will be asked for these details when speaking to the garage installer about the spring tensions. Now, I apologise for a lack of detailed camera footage for this. However, the priority here was the job itself and not the recording. As my subscribers will well know by now, working only with one functioning arm does add quite a bit of time, and my objective was to complete this project in 2 days. The first part of the job was to install the Thermawrap onto the garage door. Here I'm using contact adhesive, however any suitable adhesive will suffice. It's important really to tuck the Thermawrap into all the small crevices, as most UK garage doors have these parts open to the outside, so they need to be sealed to provide good insulation. Once the Thermawrap's applied to the door, I'm using foil tape to seal any joints. Again, this is really important as it will help significantly to help the thermal insulation of the garage. The next step is optional if your garage door has windows. You may wish to cover them internally first with black cardboard or something similar, as you might not want your neighbours thinking that you've kitted out your garage in the style of the International Space Station. Again, I foil taped these, but it was only what I had because I forgot to bring any other kind of tape. At this stage, if all you're after was the thermal insulation, then your project would end here, and this would make a big difference in the heat within the garage being contained, making it more suitable for a living space. However, the next step in this project is to proceed with installing the fiberboard panels to offer a greater degree of sound insulation. The first step for this was to cut the timber battens to size. Here I'm using my Tracksaw as it's more suited to my needs. However, you could just use a basic hacksaw to achieve the same result. The battens are secured to the garage door using glue and screws. In this case, I was using no more nails. If you choose to use screws to provide further support, you will need to pre-drill the holes into the metal, and please ensure what you're drilling and screwing into, you can see what is behind so you're not interfering with any of the door mechanisms. This was the end of day one, where I'd installed all the thermal insulation and the timber battens for the top two panels. On to day two, and a quick tip: if you need to join two of the timber battens together and you can't get a good fix, then these metal joining plates can come in really handy and can be picked up for a few pence. Install the timber battens for the middle two panels, then decide to cut the panels to size and install the top two panels at this stage. The reason for me doing this was I knew I wouldn't be able to complete this part on my own. I would need to enlist the help of my brother. So I measured the panels and cut them to size using my Tracksaw and my excellent new rail square from Bench Dogs. Then drafted in my brother to hold the panels in place while I secured them with brad nails. Again, you don't need a nail gun to do this. You could just use a regular hammer and nails, and you could probably get away with using long staples. Once the panels were secured to the battens, I applied some wooden trim over the panel, just using some super glue with activator and a few more brad nails. This was purely done for aesthetic purposes and offers no additional insulation properties. I then did exactly the same for the two middle panels, as you can see in this picture. At this stage, I didn't have any more time to film footage as I was against the clock to get it finished by the end of the second day. For the bottom two panels, I made a slight change to the design. Firstly, I had to unscrew the bolts holding the two steel locking mechanisms, and I decided to fit this as 3 panels instead of 2. The middle panel has a wider cutout than the actual size of the lock, as when this is turned, it expands outwards. If it had fitted the panel right up to the lock mechanism, you wouldn't be able to open or close the door. And here's some footage of the finished project. And that's pretty much it. It took me 2 days to complete, but if you were thinking of doing this, you could probably complete it in a day. At this stage, I don't have a decibel meter on an app to show you the difference between before and after, or a thermostat heat gun to demonstrate the pre and post project difference in the insulation properties. I can only offer you subjective assurance that if having or you're considering changing your garage to a worker living space and you need to do something about the garage door on a budget, for under 50 quid and a day's work, this will make a substantial difference in the terms of thermal and sound insulation. The 50 quid doesn't cover the garage door adjustment and the spring tensions if you're planning to do this, as you will need to discuss these costs with a local specialist installer. I hope you found this video useful. I haven't been putting out much on YouTube recently due to the ongoing big job that is my workshop garden room build. I have been slightly more active though on Instagram and Facebook, showing some other little projects, so please check out the links below if you want to see what other stuff I've been getting up to. As ever, take care, look after yourselves, and I'll see you soon. Thank you.